Welcome back to a semi-informed football podcast. My name is Marko. I'm here with Mark and Matteo. So the three amigos are back again. So before the tournament started, there was really one thing that everybody seemed to agree on, that 48 teams may be too many for this tournament. Now, the argument was simple. Say more teams meant more kind of blowouts, more one-sided games, and a lot of things that were just kind of watered down. Now, we're taking a look now, about a week and a half into the tournament. We're about midway through match day 2. And draws are becoming a big part of this tournament. So the question you're asking right now, this expanded World Cup format, has it actually made it better? Mark, I'm going to throw it off to you. Like, what can you tell me between the gap between the Giants and everyone else?
Well, yeah, I agree. I think when everyone heard the 48 teams, everyone thought it was watered down. Us being semi-informed, we even said, Spain 7-0 over Cabo Verde. And you know what? That's just ignorance. Ignorance because we didn't know these teams, right? Off the pod, I had said, well, listen, Cabo Verde and Congo, they're representing Africa in place of traditional giants like Nigeria and Cameroon. But honestly, we didn't know much about them, not enough to say how they would do. But I think the world is really loving this tournament, and a lot of underdogs are really showcasing that the parity is catching up.
Yeah, I love that. And Mark, just to kind of bring that to, I think this has been kind of done to death. But you mentioned Cabo Verde, and I think it was Matteo that actually said this before, is that they did quite well in the last AFCON. So give them their due. You know what? They are getting by ahead of teams like Nigeria, like Cameroon, and such. And one thing that I do want to point out, and this is such a feel-good story, but their keeper, the 40-year-old keeper Vozinha, going from 50,000 Instagram followers for the game to, last time I checked right now, it was 15.3 million followers. So it's an amazing story. And to your point, same thing, Mark, is that people are really loving like these great new stories and everything like that. So Matteo, is it just our ignorance, like Mark just said, where we just don't know enough about these teams, enough about these conferences to see how competitive they may be?
I mean, I don't want to insult our intelligence too bad by saying that, but I mean, definitely ignorance and not being an expert on every soccer player in the world plays a role. But I think, on the greatest stage, magical things happen. That's why everyone likes and loves to see the World Cup more than anything else in the world. So we've seen stars come from nowhere and underdogs upset giants. I think it's to be expected, but to this extent where, in every group really, there's been an underdog really taking down a Goliath. It's been sensational this World Cup. So I'm not going to blame it all on us because the World Cup's renowned for upsets, but I think this one in particular has more than usual, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't think it's renowned for upsets like we've seen. It's absolutely crazy. Marko, I'm going to also point out that it's hunger. I feel like a lot of these players, whether it's from players from Curacao, from IT, Cabo Verde, Congo, there's a lot more hunger for them. For a lot of these players, this is their audition on the world stage for a contract. So I almost feel like for some of them, they want it more than the high-paid players. Not to say that the high-paid players don't want it, but these other guys are really auditioning.
I agree with that. It's you get the idea that like some of the teams, like I know it's a huge honor to make it to the World Cup, and nobody takes it lightly. But you're almost playing with house money at this point. If you're a team like, say, Cabo Verde, Curacao, or even Uzbekistan, where nobody really expects you to win, so that the pressure is off on you. So anything that you can produce within this tournament actually does make it worthwhile, right? So I do see there are some games, and I think, Mark, you wanted to talk a little bit about this. The Germany 7-1 win over Curacao. Like these bigger teams are at times putting away these smaller teams, but they're really working for it. They're working really hard to actually put it through. Like, it's not like they're having 90% possession and they're just putting the game away. It's like, what? There's challenging parts of it. So I don't know, Matteo, do you have any examples of games that really kind of stood out for you through match day 1, maybe so far through match day 2, that were really like, wow, that turned out a lot harder than I expected?
I mean, the number one game that comes to mind is Spain and Cape Verde. Even getting a tie off of the reigning European champions is nuts. Ecuador, Curacao, where the goalie made 15 saves, the most since Tim Howard in 2014. Like, those kind of games there, where it's stalemates, those are the two go-to ones for me. But there's been plenty of hard-fought games, even earlier today, when it was Belgium and Iran. It was, again, Belgium are a bigger team than Iran, but ended up getting a tie. And all the groups, the standings there and the third place finishes, a lot of things are left out of proportion, and no one could have called what's coming this so far.
Yeah, like you would think, say, maybe 20 years ago, there's these games where, the favorites are winning 4-0. They're not happening anymore. They're really, really struggling. They're getting into these kind of physical challenges, and they're 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 having to really work for it. Mark, kind of throwing this out to you, same question I had for Matteo. What games really stood out for you where you're like, wow, that was a lot more entertaining than I expected? The underdog really did put up much more of a fight.
Congo and Portugal. That one was pretty crazy. Obviously, Spain, Cabo Verde. Even the Saudi-Uruguay game. I had said I was curious to see how the Saudi team would be because of the evolution of their league and having foreign players in there and the quality. And most definitely today, the Cabo Verde Uruguay game, it was crazy. Absolutely crazy. And with all these ties, it really opens up certain possibilities. Cabo Verde now has a 67% chance of advancing, and they legitimately could finish top of the group.
How much does coaching and tactics and strategy really go into the outcome of these games, Mark?
Well, I think if you look at the Ecuador-Curacao game, and you look at who Curaçao's coach is, and he's a famous coach here in Dick Advocaat, right? Former Dutch coach. And so where I think they tried to do something crazy against Germany, playing 3 back and pretty much turning the world on its head when they tied the game at 1 before things got away. He was smart enough to play a 5-4-1 against Ecuador, go for the low block and, almost eked out a victory. And I think on the flip side, Ecuador's tactics, the manager just didn't prepare enough and didn't have the right strategy. So I think there's that. The other thing is, I think, again, just like we're ignorant, and I know teams do their research, I think bigger teams and coaches took some of the opposition a bit too lightly. And so Lionel Scaloni, I think he didn't take Algeria lightly. I think memories of the Saudis opening up Qatar 2022 with a win over Argentina was firm in their recollection.
Yeah.
And so I think he prepared for Algeria with smart tactics.
The rise of the draw. Now, really, why are so many more matches finishing as a draw in this game? I think what we saw is a few days back, there was a day where all the matches ended up in a draw. Matteo, why do you think that this has happened?
You know what? I'm going to give you a pretty straightforward answer, and it might not make sense on the face value, but I'll explain why. I think the amount of stoppages, especially the hydration breaks in this World Cup, is slowing match momentum down. And when you don't have 45 minutes to build up an attack or experience the change of play, change of pace, momentum of the game, goals are harder to come by, especially when players are more, as you get with the hydration breaks, the 3-4 minute breaks. The constant VAR checks. Like, there's a number of things that can kill time on the clock. And in doing so, give the players of the lesser opposition, lesser team, more recovery time to defend. And when you're energized, realistically, it's easier to hold a clean sheet than it is to score, which is why I think we're seeing some major upsets or minnows in this competition hold the bigger teams because they have more energy and it's harder to build momentum.
Marko, I firmly disagree with that. I do disagree with the hydration breaks when it's not over a certain degree. And I understand what he's talking about with this momentum. But a day after those 8 teams were involved in 4 ties, the very next day you only had 6 teams produce 12 goals in 3 matches. And they had the same hydration breaks. They had the same VAR checks, if not more. I think it's just the parity. And if you look at those matches, Spain, Cabo Verde, okay, that's the anomaly for all of us. Saudi, Uruguay, I guess to be expected, there could have been a tie. Belgium, Egypt, I kept talking, how Egypt was up and coming and how Belgium was aging. So that didn't surprise me. And Iran, New Zealand was a beautiful 2-2 end-to-end game.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Just listening to what Matteo was saying before just brought me back. I think there was a press conference, or maybe it's just a quote that I read on social media about Marcelo Bielsa, the manager for Uruguay. It was very interesting. I think he was alluding to they actually Americanized this game and turned it into a game of quarters, right? And this is a game, the NBA's played like this. NFL is played like this. So they've turned it into a game of quarters. They've had a break where you can actually sit back, have a strategic break through it. And, it's fundamentally changed the way people approach games, right? So our managers approach games, right? Because they do have that rest. Mark, you mentioned hydration breaks, being over a certain degree. There are some games here they're playing in air-conditioned dome stadiums, right? Do we really need a hydration break? However, to be consistent with all of the games in the tournament, this is the way they're doing. I honestly think they're going to take a look back at this and again, only kind of replicate this if the heat really, really kind of dictates that it's something that they have to do. But I think it's a big change. Like even consuming the games on television has been a totally different factor there.
Yeah. Part of me kind of likes it, and I'll tell you why. I think the break should maybe be only 2 minutes, firm 2 minutes. But considering that the game doesn't have timeouts like in basketball, like in American football, at least it gives the coach a chance to talk to players. And I think sometimes that's really, really beneficial, right? It's beneficial to your team if you see something and you want to say something and really get that message or change some tactics or what have you. So part of me, the coach in me says I kind of like it.
I'm the complete opposite. I'm so against it. Especially when you mention the coach having a chance to really tell his tactics and change the way the game's played. He's on the sideline. It's not like he's in a separate office with no contact with the players. I get you don't want to yell every secret plan so the other team hears you. I understand that. But I think part of the game as well is letting players find their own way of play. Like, yes, you have your game plan, but not everything is set to that game plan. And when it does happen that way, we don't see as much individual brilliance. And the spectator in me really wishes we could see more of that, which we've lost over the years. And even apart from that, I think the fitness side of things, yes, it's smarter to give more breaks, hydration break, even stoppages in play, whether it's, again, a VAR check, whatever it may be. But I think we've gradually seen the demand, I guess, for fitness on the players go down and down over the years, whether it's the number of subs jumping from 3 to 5, now these new water breaks. There's so many things that I think make the game less physically demanding. And whether you agree with it or not, I, for one, am really against it because when players are tired, great moments happen, not when they're go and fully energized. That's what I believe.
Okay. I love this because I think you guys are so kind of diametrically opposed to this.
Yeah.
I'm really, really interested in this.
And
One thing that I do, Mark, go on.
Yeah, I see his point. I don't know if I'd say that it's less demanding and less physical. I mean, these players, I think they give it their all. I think those new rules to stop the rolling around on the floor, get up or get off, I think that's drastically improved the game and stopped the slowdowns. I'd actually argue that those situations were slowing the game down a lot more.
Yes.
Than what Matteo's suggesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot that went to change, and you know what? I think that they're gonna take a look at this tournament and really go with what's working and what's not. It sounded like from what Matteo was saying before, he was kind of against this, but I love the move from 3 subs to 5 because it's not just the tactical look. I just like the fact of getting more players into the game. Players that deserve to be there, players that can add that extra little bit of energy at the end of the game. Seeing a second or maybe even a third striker. I actually enjoy that rule. I don't know if going more than 5 makes a lot of sense, but I like that part of it. Mark, what did you think?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think the move from 3 to 5 was well warranted. I also think it helps demonstrate which coaches actually have a high degree of pedigree and know what they're doing, because some coaches, you really question their substitutions and why they're doing certain things. And over time, you come to realize, hey, this guy's no good. Whereas others, you see, oh, wow, what a tactician. He absolutely knew what he was doing. And he completely changed how they played, and they got the win.
See, but I would argue...
Let's give credit to managers, though.
For sure. I would argue, actually, with the 3 subs, it's even more pressure on managers and more spotlight to shine in because you have less numbers to play around with. So in that regard, I prefer it the old way. As well as that, I think the football purist in me I think if you're in the starting 11, then you are the highest level of the squad, okay? You've made it, you've earned your spot. And with these subs, guys who wouldn't normally get that chance are getting it. And yes, it's cool to find new stars and give young players a chance. I understand that. But I think if you're on the field, you earn your spot. In the same way now, I think football as a whole is turning into more like everyone play, everyone enjoy. Even when it comes to national anthems, the entire roster walks out. I think if you're on the field, you deserve to be there. You should get to I guess you're warranted that honor. And I think by adding more people to it, whether it's more teams in the World Cup, more people coming out, more subs in the game, that honor and that prestige is slowly dwindling down. It comes with positives, but for me, I prefer it the old-fashioned way.
Or
Okay,
you could
yeah,
argue
go on.
that, players give it even more, and that's why they need the subs, because they're running harder. Look at a guy like Kvaratskhelia. Okay, this guy cannot play 90-minute games, but he's one of the most phenomenal talents on the planet.
I get that, but I mean, you can play a hard 60 and get subbed off from then, or adapt your game. I don't think how we're catering to players, giving a hard shift and then getting their sub off, having ample guys on the bench in case something else goes wrong. I don't think that's the way soccer's played, and that's the way it shouldn't be played. I think we're just gradually changing as a sport, and personally, I'm not a fan of it.
Okay, so it's very, very interesting. So I'm going to say one last thing, and we're going to move on from this topic. But I think this was very, very interesting. I think that the move from 3 to 5 happened around sort of the COVID time, if I'm being correct.
Yes.
And that's where like people weren't sure what what the harms to our respiratory system were going to be and how difficult it was. But once it did make sense, it did make more sense to me. And one other thing that you guys didn't point out, it's like, you want the best on the field. I get it. I'm like, what about injury? Right? Like, the thing is that you have to be very tactical with your swaps, and just coming that, you can't, are you accounting for injury? Like, one thing that I was thinking of is the final of 2014 when Germany played Argentina. Sami Khedira getting injured very early in the game, and all of a sudden, hey, that's one of your swaps. It's out right now. Right. So
Yeah.
you can't take that back. And because of injury, you lost your tactical change where, you could have had a second scoring threat, or even bring in a defensive player if you had a lead. So, that does change things up a bit. And I think that we'll know a little bit more as things go on. Like, I think, there's a lot of rules that are coming into the game, whether it was, years back with video assisted refereeing, or, like this other type of technology in addition to human referees too. But what I think people kind of looking at this with a level head, and will come out with a with a good balance and a decision.
All right, Marko, I just wanted to throw in another rule, and we saw this. It's very interesting, actually. Miguel Almiron,
Yeah.
okay, from Paraguay, was given a straight red card for covering his mouth when he was talking. And I looked up the rule, and I thought, you know what? I get it, and I am thoroughly in agreement. So in order to stamp out racism and derogatory remarks, FIFA instituted a rule where if you cover your mouth when you're talking, it's a straight red. Now, you may not have been saying either of those two, but in a when they're trying to prove it and they can't prove one way or another, that's why they came up with the rule. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And so he was the first one to get a red card because of that rule.
And I'm like, do we agree with the rule? Is it too harsh? Should there have been some leniency earlier on?
I think, listen, you come up with a rule. A lot of times, it's not like people don't understand. They just don't want to accept it, right? And I've said that before on the pod. So in this case, listen, these players are getting the message. Caicedo, don't argue about it. You were down too long, get off. Almiron, you covered your mouth, you're off. Look at all these other players. Are they rolling around anymore injured for nothing? No. So be firm with the rule, and everything falls into place.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Matteo, what's your 2 cents on this? Like, even if it was just the covering your mouth rule, or even like the speedy recovery, or else you're staying off the field. Like, what do you think about those ones?
I mean, I think I've come across this episode as more so like an old school kind of fan. I mean, I'm not going to be ignorant and say there aren't new rules that haven't improved the game. Like, for one, I think the whole anti-rolling over thing and being forced to go off for a minute, that's a really good change, right? Or even a goal kick taking too long, where if you take more than 8 seconds, it'd be a corner. Good change. Things that would speed up the play and take out the stoppages and, the dark arts of the game. I'm all for that. And there have been some rules implemented that have eliminated that. Even like semi-automated offsides. Really, really good. I'm not a fan of all of it because, like I mentioned in this pod, there are a few changes I haven't fully agreed with. But I think in general, most rules are trying to avoid and get rid of the bad spots of the game, although not all are doing the exact job. Seeing as we're on the topic of rules and changes in the World Cup, I'd like to ask you two, if you were to add, remove, or even change a rule, what would it be? And I want to see what you have on your mind. And then the rest of us can critique it if it's too crazy. I have 2 ideas for you guys. And one is more serious. Other one, I want to see it be really interesting. Okay? The first one, I mentioned subs before, the 5 subs. We keep the 5, but you're only allowed a certain amount per position. And they would be defense, midfield, and attack. Let's say you're allowed 1 defender, 2 midfield subs, and 2 attacking subs. I think it would be really good because it would show the coach's strategy, his actual tactics, by not just whacking in 5 defenders and parking the bus. Plus, if someone is injured, you have those available slots to fill them in. I think it'd be great, personally.
Would the coach have to declare this before the game?
No, he wouldn't have to pick his 5 subs exactly, but he only has a certain amount of...
But would he have to say, for my 5 subs, I want 2 forwards, 2 mids, and 1 defense?
Yes, he would.
It kind of gives into a little bit of cheating where you'd say, well, you know what, I'm going to declare this striker as a defensive midfielder as well because he can kind of hold up play. I don't know. That's where I kind of see a whole... Do you see that as well, Mark?
No, actually, I think that's a benefit if a player can play two positions. Yeah. I'm just more concerned about what if 3 defenders get injured and you've declared you only want 1 defensive sub, and now you gotta, get some guys from mid or forward to go back and replace them because you only have 1 defensive sub.
I think that's part of the game. Stuff happens, right? And in regards to your comment, Marko, it would be declared before the game. So a guy like, Saka, who played left back and right mid, you'd only pick him in one of those areas to avoid saying, well, Havertz could play center back now,
But again,
right.
Mid-game sometimes coaches do change up formations. So
exactly. Yeah, you can. Yeah,
so even if you declare Saka to be a left wing, if you decide to change your formation and put him at left back, so be it.
Exactly. It would just it still allows that flexibility for the coaches, but that means you use your midfield sub, right?
All right, let's vote on it. I'm not for this one. Marko?
Yeah, you know what? I like the idea of the substitute. I'm going to vote no as well, just on the basis that I think I like the ideas that the managers can overload at attack if they're down, or even make it more difficult if they are up. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right way of looking at it, but that's my call too.
That's okay. Honestly, again, this is a curious discussion here. Nothing too crazy.
Sure. All right, Marko, you're up.
So I'm up, and I think this is going to be maybe just as controversial as Matteo's here. So maybe not for the final of a tournament. Again, we could take this away from the World Cup to other tournaments as well. But, knockout stage or games where a victory is necessary, rather than going through, additional time, going through the overtime period. But what about the idea of a golden goal? So first goal, and the game's over. Like a lot more pressure on the team to get that goal, get it first, and put an end to a game. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, okay. I'm actually in agreement, because then I think it forces teams to go for it. And that's what you want to see. You want to see this end-to-end action, teams chasing, as opposed to spending an extra 30 minutes of just defensive shell. Like, it's boring.
No, I agree with you too. I like seeing teams go for it. Like in hockey, for example, right? They all want that overtime winner. And I think they remove penalties altogether. My question for you, Marko, is would there be penalties at all? Because would there be like a 30-minute golden goal period? If not, then penalties? Or would it be just like play until you score?
Yeah, I didn't think this one out through, but I would say it would still be like the 30 minutes. But golden goal would end the game immediately. And in lieu of that, like, again, we can't have such a physical game of just endlessly going. Yeah, I would go to penalties, but I like the idea of if a goal has scored, the game ends immediately, because it does show that, you can't really plan for pen and put your best pen takers out there and just sort of, kill time until you get to pen.
Got it. I think we can take a vote on this. So I, for one, am in firm agreement with this.
Yeah.
Mark, what do you think?
100%.
Okay, lovely. They should add us to the FIFA board here. Mark, what do you have on your agenda?
Okay, I got 2 as well. So one thing I've always thought was the game needs to be simple and clear and transparent for all fans. Sometimes offsides, we got to wait for the stupid VAR to put some line that goes through a guy's nose. All right? And you could score with your nose, but oftentimes these offside lines, it shows someone's shoulder, someone's hand, and you can't score with your hand, right? So I think to make it clear, an offside should be that both your feet should be past the last defender, so that it's a clear and obvious offside. But then when I heard Marko talking about the golden goal, and then you mentioned hockey, I thought, what if in extra time, if it's tied after 90 minutes, what if we reduced it to 7 aside? Just like hockey reduces to 4-on-4 hockey. Okay, you have your 6 field players, 1 goalie, large field. Let's see who wins this.
Okay, this is something
blasphemous. It's blasphemous. No, Honestly, I think in hockey, or for our international listeners, ice hockey, I think it does work having three on a side to really make the game a lot quicker. I think that would not make the game quicker. I think it would make the game slower. I would tire people out a lot more. It'd be interesting. It's very interesting. I don't think that one would go.
Really?
You know what? Because we're talking about, like, in hockey, they shrink the numbers in overtime, right?
More to work with.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of space to work with, but it's a big fitness requirement. After 90 minutes too, I get what Marko is saying. At the same time, though, okay, I think we would sacrifice quality of play because everyone's going to be gassed. But you're right, a lot more chances would occur because there's a huge, huge field to play with. You're down 4 guys.
Yeah.
And also, saving your subs could prove very valuable then.
You're actually down 8 players from the field.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a lot more space.
It's true. Maybe if we implemented like an extra sub or two to go to overtime, that'd be great because fresh legs on that field. Oh.
I agree with that one. I like that idea as well.
See, this is where great thoughts happen, brainstorming.
Yeah, I know. Johnny Infantino is listening to us right now. Talk about subs. What about the idea of putting players back in that have come out of the game?
Oh.
Yeah. That's too blasphemous.
Let's take a vote on Mark's overtime rule first. So for Mark's overtime rule, are we voting yay or nay? Marko, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd vote for it.
I think, you know what? I'm going to give it like a yellow card. It's in the middle somewhere. So like, I see the potential with it.
Wishy-washy. Stand firm. Make it.
That's usually my role. Wishy-washy.
Fine. I'm leaning more so towards yay. So there you go. I'm agreeing with that. You're offside, though. I'm giving it the hardest nay I've ever said in this podcast because players like Lukaku, Alvaro Morata would win 5 Ballon d'Ors, and that cannot happen. Yeah. Marko, what do you think?
I have to agree with that. I do agree having one leg out like it should be offside. Having a handout, no. And I think they're really kind of clamping down on that, where if it's not a meaningful part, like it does make sense. But having 2 feet, that's a significant advantage, right? That could be very, very significant. So I think there are some tweaks that need to happen, but the 2 feet one, I think that's a little bit too much.
How is it? It shows that he's clearly offside.
No, it's a whole stride and a half ahead of the guy. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And if you're 6'5", that's a big distance, If
you're against it, that means that you believe that should be onside?
I'm against having it so that, okay, I think if you're a tiny bit ahead, even if it's a toenail, you're offside. I don't want to have you being a stride and a half ahead of someone, but, your pinky's still barely in line, you'd be on. I think if you're ahead by a little bit, you're off. And if you're in line by a little bit, you're still off. If any part of you is in front, you're done. That's the way I see it. I don't know if Marko agrees.
Yeah, you know what? I think that people will be playing it where they will purposely have one leg off or actually time their run. So they'll have, one leg stride ahead. It would cause a lot of goals that we consider cheap.
Yeah, but I think that's where defenses have to evolve.
Yeah, defense has a hard time as it is. From somebody that's played defense, from watching my son for years now, being at the brunt of it, like, again, to have to deal with that as well, I think it's just a little bit too unfair.
And yet we have many 0-0 and 1-1 ties.
Maybe. It could be more interesting, but we'll move past that. I do want to touch quickly, though, on your idea of reintroduction of subs, because that is something I think is a fantastic idea. It's very sad seeing a player who's having a great game get subbed out because he's gassed or his small knock. But I think if the coach chooses to make 2 subs to bring this guy back in the game, like, clearly it's up to him to decide if it's worth it. And even if it's not, that's his call to make. I think seeing someone who had a fantastic shift come back in after 30 minutes would be amazing.
The only thing is, when the player comes out and they're off for some time, their muscles are going cold. And so I think this would make them more susceptible to injury. And so for that reason, I know it's exciting, and I think sometimes that would be cool. But I think for player safety, I'd have to say no to that.
Boring.
Very fair. Very fair. All right. You know what? I think we're going to wrap it up right now. So whether you're loving this expanded World Cup format or you're still not convinced, whether you love the rule changes or you're still not convinced, you know what? It's been anything but predictable this far, and I've really enjoyed the tournament up to this time.
So it's still got plenty of football ahead. So make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. We're going to start ramping up a lot of our podcasts this time, giving you a lot more analysis, a lot more kind of conversation from the 3 of us. So until next time, we're keeping you
semi-informed.